is it plausible that Joseph of Arimathea took the body and buried it as was said? Now, we're not talking about plausible. I'm talking about what's most likely happened. And so we know a lot about the first century. We wish we knew more, but we know a lot. Now, there's several scenarios about what would have happened. Four, basically. Either the Romans would have taken care of his body. Next, the family and friends would have taken care of his body. That's the second scenario. The Sanhedrin, so the religious leaders would have taken care of his body. Or we've got this fourth scenario that the Christians are talking about, that is, a rich, influential, powerful person took him in. So by far the most common thing was that the Romans dealt with it. Now, Christians want to say that in Judea, well, no, the Romans dealt with it by leaving it on the cross. That's there's lots and lots of citations. The hanging up there naked for days was supposed to be part of the punishment. Like, that was part of what it was designed to do, was the warning. So if it was up to the Romans, that's what they did. There's definitely very good historical advice when the Romans were involved at the end. What they did was they either just let the dogs and crows eat the bodies, or they would throw it into a mass grave. So I'm not saying that's what happened. John Dominic Crossan wants to say that's definitely what happened. But what you can't argue is that isn't what happened to most of the people, because most crucifixion victims, that's what happened. So again, if we're getting into this, what probably happened, that's actually probably what happened. But fine, we'll go with it, and we'll say, oh, well, okay, in Judea, it just so happened, despite all perhaps common sense to the that they did actually give it to a family or a friend. What would happen then? Well, that person would get a remembered grave. A family or friend would remember where they put them. The trick is that the gospel is very clear that the friends were all gone, and that Mary wasn't influential enough to get the body on her own. Like the gospels, if I'm going to accept the gospels at face value, family and friends didn't get his body.
Whoa. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the second most common scenario for burial for victims, right?
Can I just ask, wasn't there an occasion, and I haven't read Josephus, but wasn't there an occasion in Josephus where Josephus talks about getting some crucified friends?
So yeah, Josephus at one point came upon a battle. He was there to report and to write down, and he actually noticed that 3 people hanging there were his friends. And he petitioned to Caesar through the commander who was there, and they let him take those 3 down. Now, 2 of them died anyway. They hadn't been up there for very long, but they still died. And one was given Caesar's personal physician, and with that personal physician, he came through. So we're not told how those 2 that did die were buried. So, but yes, you are correct in thinking that there is a case of that's the only case we know of that anyone who went up and didn't die, and that is often used to address the Muslim Islam claim that perhaps Jesus was put up on the cross, or anything in the swoon theory category, right? That he was put up and didn't actually die. Historically, that seems pretty implausible, unless you're wanting to say that was a miracle as well, which I think they should just lean into. Just say, well, yeah, because Jesus was fully man and fully God, so of course he's not going to die on the cross because he's he got that God. So on the most common, no one disputes that. Most common case, Romans just left them. Friends and family did give honorable burials, but the Gospels contradict that. So we could say it's plausible, but that would contradict the Gospels. The third case, what happens is it was up to the Sanhedrin to get all bodies down before nightfall, because that was just one of the commands in Deuteronomy. You weren't supposed to leave someone hanging on the tree. So that's fine. You can say that the Sanhedrin in general, if those first 2 scenarios fell through, it fell to the Sanhedrin. but there's very strict rules in place that when they do that, they have to place the person in a criminal's grave in the criminal's graveyard. They had two separate graveyards that they considered the criminal's graveyards, and everyone went there. And the criminal's graveyard was not a marked was they did not take care to mark who was going where, and they definitely it became an unknown because it was it was supposed to be again part of the not the punishment, but the observance. They weren't allowed to. If you were the mother of someone buried in the criminal's graveyard, you weren't allowed to go in there and grieve them. Like it was just a thing that once someone was in that criminal's graveyard, yes, their body was down, but they were basically excommunicated after death, right? They were so those. If that happened, then Jesus' body again would still not be remembered. It would just be somewhere in one of the criminals' graveyards. So we have the three most likely scenarios here, and they all involve not people not knowing where Jesus' body is. So all I was going to say was, so what Christians had to do, and you can see this in the legendary development of Josephus, they realized they had a problem with, well, how do we know where Jesus' body was? Now we need to invent someone who was powerful enough to get the body, because we know that Mary didn't get the body because she wasn't powerful enough to go ask for it. But then also not put him where he was supposed to go, not put him in the criminal graveyard where he was supposed to go. So now we had to invent someone who's supposedly on the Sanhedrin who unanimously voted to kill Jesus in the Gospels. A couple hours later, you know what? That guy I just voted unanimously to kill, now I want to get his body and put it, somewhere where it's not supposed to go. So, like,
interesting.
So scholars agree that this is plausible. That story's plausible because we know that exceptions were made for rich and powerful people to sometimes circumvent rules, right? So that's basically what Joseph Arimathea was created for, and or really did. It's this weird plot device you need to rescue Jesus from the three most common things that would have happened to him. So when people come at me and say, well, no, the Joseph Arimathea story is plausible, I say, fine, it's plausible. I don't say it's not plausible. I'm saying it's the fourth most likely thing. So how am I a weird fringe person to say that the three things that are more likely that represent 100% of the people who aren't named Jesus?
Yeah.
Right? Why am I the fringe person for saying that the thing that happened to everyone else probably also happened to Jesus?